Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG, the only show coming to you from inside Wizards of the Coast with access to all kinds of awesome people like the man we have with us today. Corey Bowen is going to walk us through some of the Commander set booster cards. Corey, why don't you tell us a little bit to start about your role with Crimson Vow?
Yeah, sure, Blake. Thanks for having me. So on Crimson Vow, I work.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's okay. Corey was just about to tell you. Oh, there he is.
Am I
There he
live?
is. You're
Sorry
now you're
about that.
back. Okay.
Those
Sorry,
only
everyone.
hiccups I've had.
That we've been on the line with Corey for the past half an hour, and that's the first time that's happened. So hopefully, we won't get any more interruptions. Okay, Corey, what was your role in Innistrad Crimson Vow?
Great. Hello, Blake. Thanks for
Hi.
having me. Sorry for
Absolutely.
the random freeze. I worked a little bit as a designer on the main set, and
Hmm.
I led the set design for the Commander set as well as for the Commander set booster cards as well. So, both of those Commander pre-constructed decks, the Red-Black Vampires deck and the Blue-White Spirits deck, those are decks me and my team built, and we made all the new cards and all the new cards for the set boosters as well.
Yeah, and we'll see more for the Commander precons uh, early next week. But today, what we're going to talk about is the Commander set booster cards. There's 8 of them. We've already revealed one of them. But before we get to that, we wanted to welcome you all to the stream. I'm throwing out puns now. Corey's little freeze threw me off a little bit, but we're going to keep going. Uh, and just welcome you all to the stream with a little vampire we like to call Welcoming Vampire. So this is not, to be clear, this is in the main set. This is not one of the Commander set
Ooh.
booster cards. So Welcoming Vampire is a 2/3 white creature vampire for 2 and a white that has flying. And whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. If you're old like me, you get some serious Mentor of the Meek vibes here. It's got some white card draw. It only triggers once each turn, but unlike Mentor of the Meek, it doesn't cost any mana to draw those cards. So this is really powerful with anything that can make tokens at instant speed. Just getting value for casting small creatures, which is what you want to do. And because it's a vampire, it's got that cool Fang frame treatment. Most vampires in this set are black and red. This one's white, and it's very, very welcoming.
Hey,
Corey,
love to see a card draw in white for Commander, something that we've been
yep.
doing a lot more recently. So excited to see stuff like that go off. And, good old Chapel Geist, 3 mana, 2/3 flying creature is not an embarrassing stat line at all.
Nope, not at all. But yeah, I think people are going to be interested in this for the draw a card wording on this white card. At any rate, that's going to be in the main set, but we're going to spend most of this set talking about the Commander set booster cards. So, for those of you unfamiliar, we recently started creating a set of 8 Commander-focused cards that are found in set boosters and can be also found in collector boosters as well. Corey, what's sort of the philosophy behind these 8 cards? Why create them? What role do they serve in the set?
Yeah, so these cards, I mean, fundamentally, they're designed to be some fun Commander content that's attached to the set. We make these pre-constructed decks, and usually for each set, we've made 2 pre-constructed decks per set with pretty rigid themes in each one of them. And when they have rigid themes, it gives us a little less room to be a little bit more expansive and reach other stuff that the set's trying to do, or
Mm-hmm.
call back on some other stuff in Innistrad that we really like, or just make some individually cute cards that we think will be fun for Commander. Some of the drive for this is also like set boosters are a great way to acquire cards when you're not drafting. And it was kind of the impetus of the idea was, trying to find more ways to have a given player open a set booster and kind of be invited into the Commander scape one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And so having cards that, you see the set symbol, you figure out it's legal in Commander. Like, okay, should I go play Commander? Should I go check out Commander? I think that's a really, really good doorway um, to kind of bring Magic's most popular format into more relevancy inside of a booster pack.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So, speaking of cute cards, we have already revealed one of the commander cards, and it's pretty much the cutest. So, Wedding Ring was one we showed off early on. But Corey, obviously, you're one of the people behind the design of this card. So, talk a little bit about where this card came from.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite card that I made for this set is the Wedding Ring. Crimson Vow is all about a vampire wedding. I think for as long as I've been following Magic and been a Magic player, you've seen people just seen many different posts of like different couples who learned the game or grew together through Magic would propose with each other with like these custom Magic cards that were wedding rings, or have like their relationship symbolized by these custom Magic cards. And I thought it would be a really, really cute idea while we're on a set that's really fixated on a wedding to make a card that is literally a wedding ring. So I don't know, maybe you can go fake propose or real propose to your partner with a wedding ring card. So, this card, when you cast it, you propose to someone and marry them, and they also get a wedding ring, as weddings do. And then you guys share your life together. When you gain life, you both gain life, and when you draw cards, you both draw cards. During your own turns, your opponent gets to draw the card. During their turns, you get to draw your cards. Uh, in general, super delightful. We actually had a lot of different iterations of this card that were really fun. At some point in the design process, this card was making it so that if you or your married person lost the game, you both lost the game, and that was just like a little difficult to figure out. And then at some
Little
point,
harsh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was a little harsh. At some point, we had it where you both win the game, and then we had to figure out what that meant for 1v1 play. Would that just draw the game or not?
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, I think we got into a really, really nice spot where you cast it, you propose, you're in a marriage, and you're drawing cards. And for people who aren't a super big fan of strict political play, I think there's still a lot of gameplay if you're like the mono white deck that struggles to draw cards, and there's a blue green deck at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, marry them. They're gonna draw cards. You'll draw their cards.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still this kind of counterplay element that's a little bit apolitical in that sense that I think is really fun.
Yep, and it's another white card that says draw a card on it. So, all right, now let's start with, let's go through some of the new cards. So there are 7 more new cards that are just being revealed here for the first time. We're going to spend some time talking about each one. If in chat you have questions about these cards individually, we'll try to answer them as we're talking about those cards. If there are bigger questions about the set or Commander in general, or anything else for Corey, we'll hit those up at the Q&A section at the end. So let's start with the first of our cards, Breathkeeper Serif, another white card. This one does not say draw a card, but it is a 4/4 creature angel for 4 mana and 2 white. Has flying and Soul Bond, an ability we haven't seen in a while. As long as Breathkeeper Serif is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, when this creature dies, you may return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. So, Corey, talk to us about Soul Bond in this set.
Oh yeah, so that's the big thing for these set booster cards. There's a couple of cards with the Soul Bond mechanic. For those who aren't familiar, Soul Bond was a mechanic somewhere in the original Innistrad block. And while we were making some cards for Crimson Vow in Commander, we were trying to think about what would be some fun stuff to call back to an old Innistrad that kind of fits this wedding theme. And one of the fun things that the Crimson Vow is doing for the wedding theme is kind of emphasizing pairs of creatures in some sense. There's Hal and Helena and Elena, which are on a card together. There's a few red and white cards that care about attacking the 2 creatures. Weddings, I guess, traditionally are all about pairs in some sense. So we thought bringing Soul Bond would be a really interesting way to like have a callback to Innistrad while also kind of emphasizing two things joining together, or two creatures joining together in a bond. So that's kind of where the soul bond stuff came from. This card I think is quite sweet. It's very resilient as long as it's paired, but you can destroy one of them and then destroy the bonded creature and then destroy serif, and then your serif doesn't come back. So there's still a way to get around it, but it just applies a lot of resiliency, which I think is one of White's strengths in Commander that isn't emphasized as much, is when White gets to keep stuff on the board more, or stuff safe. I think that's one of its strong suits, so I liked emphasizing that in this card.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then it looks like you made a cycle of these Soul Bond cards. So let's talk about the next one, Imperius Mindbreaker. So this is the blue one of the cycle. It is a 1/4 human wizard for 1, a blue, and a blue. It has Soul Bond. We said it was a cycle. As long as Imperius Mindbreaker is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, whenever this creature attacks, each opponent mills cards equal to its toughness. Corey, tell us about this card.
Yeah, I'm a lover of mill. I enjoy milling my opponents. I think it's very fun. I enjoy playing Phoenix, which is a blue-black legend from Born of the Gods that is a mill deck that cares about your creatures having high toughness, essentially. So I thought it'd be cool to have one of these, have the blue creature care about milling your opponents, hit each opponent with your mill, scale up for toughness. With Soulbond, it's kind of really interesting to care about these variable stats of what the other creature is, because that makes, when you Soulbond with a creature with like the 1/13 that's in this set, you could play the 1/13 and then play Imperius Mindbreaker, Soulbond to it, attack your opponents, and they'll mill for 13 or more cards, which I think is just really cool, really sweet. Glad to bring another mill piece into this deck or set.
All right. Next up, we have Doomweaver. So this is a 1/8, speaking of high toughness, Spider Horror for 4, a black and a black, with Reach and Soul Bond. And it says, as long as Doomweaver is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, when this creature dies, draw cards equal to its power. Tell us about this one, Corey.
Yeah, this one potentially quite powerful. Drawing cards equal to a creature's power is pretty strong with the right stuff. Love to see 8 toughness on Doomweaver. I think that's really funny for a spider. Spiders have 8 legs, But this card, I don't know. It's sweet. It draws cards. It's good for sacrifice strategies. It's good for big creature strategies. To kind of protect your creature. You play 6/6. You Soul Bond it. Well, when that 6/6 dies, you draw 6 cards. That's a lot of cards. Very swingy. Very fun. I just think this one is pure value, pure fun. Really big fan of the Giant Black Widow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think that I'm not sure, but I think that red marking is like in the shape of Gristlebrand's mask or something.
It looks like it. We'd have to look at the
That's
art
sweet.
description. We can maybe do that. Next up, let's look at Miragephalanx. Miragephalanx is a red 4/4 human soldier for 4 and 2 red, total of 6 mana. It, of course, has Soul Bond. As long as Miragephalanx is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of this creature, except it has haste and loses Soul Bond. Exile it at the end of combat. That's a lot of tokens there, Corey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what we call heat shimmers, which is when red creates temporary clones of creatures that you can attack with that turn. I thought it'd be pretty cool to have a red creature where you can soul bond to something, and I mean that when they're soul bonded, they create another Miragephalanx that doesn't have soul bond, and then another one of the bonded creatures. So I have my Miragephalanx out, I play my Sarah Angel or whatever, and then on my combat, I'm gonna get an extra 4/4 Miragephalanx and an extra Sarah Angel to attack with. It's great. Not only is this good for attacking, but this is great for manipulating enter the battlefield effects, or if you have creatures with strong dies triggers and sacrifice outlets, it's great for getting your value out of your creature multiple times. So there's a lot of fun combinations you can do with these cards. And yeah, I don't know. I love Heat Shimmers.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the last one in this cycle. I think I counted right. Yes, I did. Thundering Mare. That's very punny. It's a 3/3 horse spirit for 4 and a green. It has Soul Bond. And as long as Thundering Mare, I read that as Nightmare literally every time I read this card until we did it live just now. As long as Thundering Mare is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So it kind of turns them into like little Forgotten Ancients or Mana Gorge Hydras or whatnot. So where'd this one come from, Corey?
Yeah, so, the green one, this is kind of reminiscent of a Mana Gorger Hydra or a Taurian Mauler, which are these creatures that grow really big whenever your opponents cast spells. And a Commander, 3 opponents is 3 times the spells, so they do get quite big in Commander. We thought it would be cool to have a creature that kind of imparted that ability to someone else as well. So every time your opponents are casting spells, 2 of your creatures are getting counters, which is a pretty good rate. I find those cards would be a lot of fun, and I thought this Soulbound creature would also be really fun in +1/+1 counters decks that are already running stuff like Mana Gorger Hydra or Forgotten Ancient or whatever. I think this complements those decks quite nicely.
Yeah, and naming it Nightmare means people are going to be asking for the cycle of what the Nightmare version of every color would be. Chat's already on it.
That's interesting. Is Lightmare a white card or a red card?
I think there's a Brightmare. I don't know. We'll have to look this up afterwards. Yeah, Lightmare. I said red would be Fightmare.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
What is blue?
Blue. I don't know. Black could be Blightmare. Black could also just be Nightmare. I mean, that's literally a card.
Blue is like Sightmare, just conceived.
Sightmare. Yeah.
It's just a big eye.
Yeah. Slightmare was another suggestion. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we could do this for a while. Let's look at so that's the cycle of Soulbond cards. There are a couple others in this group of Commander set booster cards. The next one is called Hollowhenge Overlord. Hollowhenge Overlord is a 4/4 green wolf for 4 and 2 green mana with flash. And at the beginning of your upkeep, for each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Corey, tell us about this card.
Yeah, so this card, comes from a number of places. It's worth noting that among the pre-constructed decks, there is white is in there, black is in there, blue is in there, red is in there, but there's no green new cards in the pre-constructed deck. And so this is kind of the 6th rare in the Commander set booster cards, so it's kind of the odd one out. And we decided to try to design a green card because there was less new green cards for Commander overall coming out with this set. So then this is like, now what space we want green. I was really interested in doing some big Timmy kind of wolf or werewolf build around. We landed on making it a cool wolf because there were frankly plenty of werewolves, and also we couldn't design DFC cards or TDFC cards for these set booster slots. And so this is a wolf. The flash plays really, really well with different day and night flip conditions. You can cast your spell on your off turn and help control your flow of day and night pretty well for werewolf decks. But in addition, if you just have a regular wolf deck, this also just works quite well with wolf decks. And there are a few wolf cards that have flash and care about instant speed a little bit, which is nice. And then this makes a lot of 2/2 wolf tokens if you have a lot of wolf stuff already. For people who've tried to make wolf decks, not werewolf decks, but wolf decks before, they'll know that there are quite a handful of cards that just make a large amount of wolf tokens. And so if I cast like Casted Cage Breakers and get a bunch of wolves, or
Mm-hmm.
one of the many other cards that makes a bunch of wolves, this does a really good job doubling those amount of wolves, rewarding me for going wide with wolves, which is actually what wolves do a lot of. Or even if I'm just playing my regular werewolf deck, this is a quite a powerful token maker in that werewolf
Mm-hmm.
deck. So I think this is satisfying all those buckets. I'm pretty happy with the card. I think it's quite good. And I love those good dogs.
Yeah, and you mentioned that neither of the commander decks for this set have green in them. Is that something that these set booster cards are used for, doing some of that color balancing, giving everyone a little bit of something?
Not particularly. There was a point where that was the goal, and there
Mm-hmm.
would be more green cards and not as much of a cycle. But as time moved on, we felt a lot more comfortable making the set booster cards have a nice clean cycle of five cards, and then this is how I do the set booster cards. Is for the sixth, I decided to kind of lean it towards the color that's underrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
Different people might do different set booster cards different way, but frankly, so far, all the set booster cards have been by me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of where I've leaned. Certainly with legends that are in the set boosters, we want to lean towards different themes that haven't been hit already by the main set or the commander sets so
Mm-hmm.
far.
So before we get to the last card, I want to jump off something you just said, that you've been the
Mhm.
primary on these 8 cards for the last 2 sets. Can you talk a little bit about how these cards are woven into the process, or come out of the process? Because you said you were a bit on the main
Mhm.
set, mostly on the commander cards, and then this was kind of an offshoot of that. So where in the process do these fit in?
Yeah, so these cards are actually developed kind of side by side with the pre-constructed decks. So our commander teams, for these sets at the very least, processes, are always changing and
Mm-hmm.
ebbing and flowing. But, as a commander lead of Midnight Hunt, we would have the decks we want to do. We would know what we want to do. We would start mocking up kind of what new cards we want to do. And kind of once the decks are a little bit stable, we have some new cards. We kind of turn the page and be like, okay, well, let's talk about these new cards now. Like, we have these 8 set booster cards we want to make. Are there any really easy gimme ideas? Any high level goals for Midnight Hunt? We knew we wanted to make a Curse Commander, and
Mm-hmm.
then we had the fun idea to make those flashback cards. And then for Vow, I knew immediately I wanted to make a Wedding Ring. I knew I wanted to make another legendary creature, which we haven't shown yet, so I won't expand that much on it. And then I kind of was looking for a cycle like those Soulbond cards, but being on Vow kind of helped me have um, a little bit more perspective on what I felt we was missing from the main set that we could serve here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit where the wedding ring comes from. I thought that was a really key trope of the wedding space that we could deliver on a high profile by having it be like on this pedestal of the mythic and one of the
Mm-hmm.
mythics and the commander set booster cards. Um, but overall, these are just kind of developed with the same team as the commander decks. And we try to playtest them in the commander decks as well. They're not in the commander decks, but we'll have like an extra stack of cards that's just the set booster cards a lot of the time. And we'll just, if you're in the right colors, or if you're just not in the right colors, you'll just draw one of those cards instead, so we can try to playtest them more in the
Mm-hmm.
commander sphere.
Okay. And how much do you keep these pretty sequestered, or do sometimes, like, does the design move from this set to the commander to main? Like, do the sets steal from each other a little bit, or have they stayed pretty sequestered?
There's a lot. There's a good amount of stealing with stuff like the cycles, with the flashback stuff and the soulbond stuff. Those are going to move around a little less because they kind of have their home there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a red card in Midnight Hunt that got cut from the set booster cards, and I ended up putting it in a future set that I led that is yet to be released. In Vow, I think there was other green cards that were also maybe moved around somewhere else. I'm not sure if they got anywhere or not, but um, with kind of the generic cards that aren't aligned to a cycle or aren't like very heavily setting specific, those
Mm-hmm.
cards are certainly floating around in space somewhere if they didn't make it through here.
Makes sense. All right. I actually wasn't meaning to like vamp and like hold off the last card. It is a cool card, but this wasn't like some grand reveal. But we are going to reveal our 8th and final Commander set booster card, which is the multicolor legend that you were hinting at. Umbres
Mm.
Fear Manifest. So, Umbres Fear Manifest is a 1/1 legendary creature, nightmare horror for 3, a blue, and a black. But wait, there's more. Umbres Fear Manifest gets +1/+1 for each card your opponents own in exile. That's all of your opponents. Whenever Umbres or another nightmare or horror enters the battlefield under your control, target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a land card.
Mm.
Yeah, Corey, you mentioned you like milling before. This card mills pretty hard.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Mill. Real homies in chat will recognize that this looks a lot like Consuming Aberration. It's very much inspired Consuming Aberration. Kind of the impetus here is thinking about, we were thinking about Innistrad. What's Innistrad about? Uh, what can we play with Innistrad? And I was thinking about, the word nightmares, super flashy for horror movies and stuff. Obviously, the word horror. Those are two creature types that don't really have a commander, but we see a lot of similar themes with nightmares and horrors and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be cool to like print a card that was more about this offensive mill stuff, and it was kind of an avatar of fear or like a nightmare horror archetypical thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where this came from. This is like very nightmare horror movie monstery kind of deal. The mechanics of the card, other than being mill, are trying to do mill in a different way. I love mill, and whenever I built like some of my mill commander decks or my casual mill commander decks, I would always put like Ashioks in the deck because I enjoyed Ashiok cards, but
Mm-hmm.
Ashiok cards typically exile cards instead of mill cards, which gets a little weird when your mill deck wants to like use your opponent's graveyard.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about what if there was a commander that wanted to exile cards and you wanted to run Ashiok, who conveniently, by the way, makes nightmares a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to do that stuff. You wanted to do more of that exile side of mill and care about different cards than your typical mill deck, which I think
Mm-hmm.
Umbris is successfully doing. In addition to that, I thought it was kind of funny that one of the archetypes of horror and horror fiction is like this Lovecraftian stuff, and like Magic's take on Lovecraftian before has been Eldrazi on Innistrad, and one of the Eldrazi's mechanics and old Battle for Zendikar stuff has been exiling stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
Eldrazi had exiled stuff before and have used things in exile through processing. So I think it's kind of fun to play like a nightmare horror deck, and then maybe you also play some Eldrazi processors to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So all those angles together are kind of coming together for, hey, this seems like a cool blue-black consuming aberration legend horror movie Eldrazi using thing. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty neat.
So you've mentioned several times your love of milling and you put Ashioks in your deck. How much of yourself do you put into these cards? Where you're like, this is a thing I would enjoy, and how much is just sort of general game design principles baked in?
Yeah, so everything has general game design principles baked into it. Like, we wouldn't print a card if we thought it was going to be pretty miserable or if most people are not going to like it. Mill has kind of an emotional divide, but in general, try to design to as many audiences as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the mill cards come from a little bit. Is I know there's audiences that really enjoy mill stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
know there's audiences that have spider decks. Bam, here's a 1/8 spider. I know there's audiences that enjoy heat shimmers. I know, a lot of these things I was talking about. I love
Mm-hmm.
these things, blah blah blah. But there's also this world where Magic has such a big game and such a wide audience. Sometimes if you just design cards that you'll enjoy and you'll want to put in decks, like there's going to be people out there who feel very similarly. And sometimes you want to build cards that you wouldn't enjoy, but other people would enjoy. And there's some other cards that are in a lot of the sets that I design and other designers design that fall within those buckets.
Okay.
So it's kind of about finding who's the audience for. It's more about making sure a card has an audience than specific card has the widest audience.
Sure.
We're not trying to appeal to everyone with one card. We're trying to appeal to the people who really like that card with this particular card.
Makes sense. All right, that is all the previews we have for you. If that's all you tuned in for, feel free to step away. But we've got Corey for at least the next 30 minutes, and we can ask him a bunch of questions. So if you have questions for Corey about anything related to any of the cards we revealed today, he can talk a little bit more about Commander design as a whole. We aren't yet talking about the Commander decks that are for this set because they have not been fully revealed yet. But any other questions you have for Corey, put them in chat. We'll start writing them down and going through them as best as we can. I guess if you have questions for me, you can put them in there too. For example, where's Kaya? So Kaya will be revealed today. So we have a Wizards of the Coast fan email that many people are signed up for. If you signed up for the email before today on our website, prior today, you will get the email today. Exact time, I'm not sure, but sometime soon. Kyle will show up in your inbox, and then I'm sure you'll also, if you aren't on that email list, I'm sure you'll see it online very, very soon. So today, because tomorrow's the full card image gallery. All right, next up, let's go with, so we got a couple questions about how you get the full art cards versus the regular cards for Commander decks. So the full art cards can be found in collector boosters for even the Commander decks, even the Commander deck cards. There is a slot that you can get a full art, extended art is actually what we call it, in the collector boosters, and then the main ones show up in the set boosters. Let's see. Okay, so Corey, I've got a couple questions that are about the main set, so if you're able to answer them, great. If not,
okay,
we'll go on. So, this says we have 6 legendary vampires plus Florian, but just 1 legendary werewolf. Any insight on that, Corey?
Yeah, this is the vampire set, so mostly this set in an isolated kind of environment was focusing on legendary vampires. We did make sure that the legendary werewolf in Midnight Hunt was going to be great for Commander. Going to have a lot of going to be able to bring kind of all the werewolves together. Part of the reason you might not see a lot of other legendary werewolves is that double-sided legends in general that are kind of all focused around maybe a single creature types mechanic have been challenging to design in different ways. Just different legendary werewolf DFC creatures are just a little bit of a challenge. So a lot of the effort kind of went into that one werewolf legendary versus making a bunch. There's also this thing where vampire characters are a little bit more natural. I think you can see like Magic has a long history and practice with making different vampire characters, and we have a bunch of different vampire houses on Innistrad. And so when you're making a vampire wedding and there's a guest list and you're going to have a cast of families of vampires, it's kind of really natural to design that cast list of vampires who are coming to your wedding. The werewolf set didn't really have like, hey everyone, all of the legendary werewolves join together. It was less of that. It was more of just other stuff going crazy.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Let's see. How about this one? I love the goad mechanic. Will we see it again soon?
Yeah, I also love the goad mechanic, and we will see a lot of it soon.
All right. Why did you all stop doing full art foil commander cards?
Is that a question for me or you? I don't know. I don't remember doing that.
I'm not sure. Not sure either. So, sorry, we don't have an answer for that question. Were the horror creatures in Vow designed for Umbres? Because there are a number of
No.
horror creatures. Okay?
Yeah, the horror creatures in Vow weren't designed for Umbris. Creature types like horror, especially for sets like Innistrad, where you see stuff like the spider horror in the set booster cards, or like the eye horror, which is the eye behind the curtains. Those cards typically that horror type is, kind of put on last minute or removed last minute because it's kind of a descriptor rather than like a main thing. Like it could have just been eye and it's horror because we're trying to denote that it's scary and trying to set an atmosphere, and it could have just been a spider, but it's a spider horror because it's trying to denote more of this monstrous atmosphere. So there's not a lot of stability in the horrors for us to design around it, and the kind of sets worked at different timelines. Umbris was just more taking advantage that we knew that there were going to be a handful of blue and black horrors in the sets because of the way things are. And we also knew that there was going to be that big slug legend that cared vaguely about horrors. So I thought it was a good place to, put a horror in a different direction.
All right. Next up, let's go with when will I think this question was answered in chat, but I'll say it out loud. When will a popular and powerful creature card from an Innistrad set gets reprinted be previewed? It has already been previewed. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben is the card that Mark Rosewater's teaser was pointing towards. We've had a bunch of questions about getting the Commander cards on Arena. We don't have that right now, but never say never. Arena has lots of different valves where it can add cards to the environment at different spots. So we don't have anything to announce at this point in time, but never say never. Next up, let's go with. So I'll acknowledge this question, but we're not going to answer it. Will OG Edgar Markov be getting a reprint anytime soon? We don't have anything to announce with that right now. All right, let's see. I'll ask this question, Corey, and we'll see if you can answer it. Why wasn't Jalava given the legendary creature slot for the set booster exclusive cards? She can't fit into the main set as a 3-color card, and as a vampire, she fits with Crimson Vow's theme.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Like, why isn't Jalava included? Quite frankly, like, we didn't consider Jalava like a must-have character to bring in here. Another pressure against this is that we had just done another 3-color Grixis Legendary in the set boosters in the previous sets. I know Umbris is blue-black, and that's also a subset, but things get a little bit different when it's these, like, specific 3-color sets, or 3-color... 3 sets of colors. I don't know. So overall, like, honestly, it's just because Jalava wasn't this Innistrad character that was burning in the back of our heads. She isn't as popular as other Innistrad characters, as I believe, and there were plenty of vampires, so I don't feel the need to serve on a vampire legend.
Fair enough. Why did R&D decide to choose blood tokens over vampire tribal as the theme for the vampire-centric set? So why were blood tokens the vampire mechanic?
Yeah, creature theme strategies are a little bit dependent on cards around it in the environment, and they're a little harder to design as full set themes. So blood tokens, they appear a lot in red and black, and vampires appear a little bit in other colors at higher rarities. But blood tokens were kind of the take as the vampires, like, what resources do they use, what can they use? And if you look at different vampire strategies of the past, vampires actually have a lot of very disparate strategies. Some vampires care about like really going wide. Some vampires care about just gaining life. Some vampires care about discarding cards. Some vampires care about sacrificing themselves. So there's enough, like a lot of disparate themes of vampires that, we were going to have to pick one direction and kind of do something that would make a really fun set. And blood tokens fit well in kind of any strategy in general. And they do really well with discarding matter stuff, with which vampires have cared about in the past, with kind of the madness type stuff. And they just play well with a bunch of different archetypes that you can build around and make for a pretty fun limited environment. And that way they were kind of a flavorful expression of vampires that fit within the mechanic. We thought that would be a good way to go for them.
All right. We'll stay on the vampires theme. Are you planning on more support for Orzhov vampires in Standard with the printing of Edgar? There isn't a lot right now.
I'm not really the guy to talk to about what we're supporting specifically in Standard. I'm a Commander boy. I'm Commander in a way. Sorry to disappoint.
All right. Is there? Let's see. Well, this is probably the cleanest way. We had a bunch of questions about Audric, which was revealed today. People love the character, and there's lots of questions about his mechanic, his abilities. But this is a question that says, is there any reason some legendary creature cards get stuck with set mechanics, like Audric, while others do not, like Olivia?
No, I mean, there's no specific reason why one legend is like allocated a set mechanic. It's kind of like can we make a cool card? I believe like Audric came from a design that I submitted when I was on the Vow main set, and we thought it was a really cool idea to call back to the Audric that cared about all these keywords. And he's a vampire. What do vampires do right now? They're making blood. It'd be really cool if he made blood for all those keywords. Originally, he did a little bit more, but the ability that we thought that was really cool and were really flavorful of both of like the classic Audric style and the Crimson Vow vampire style, and those married together with this ability. That ability takes up a lot of text, and so there wasn't that much room to add more definition. In general, like I'm really happy with Audric. I'm planning on building a commander deck with Audric. I think he's really, really cool. So I'm really excited about the card, and I love the mix of again that Audric callback plus the new blood token stuff. And there wasn't like a mandate that we were going to give this certain character the new mechanic. It was more like, hey, this seems like a really cool design. Let's try to go for it.
All right. I'll answer this one real quick. Lore-wise, we've got Vorinclex on Kaldheim and other Praetors showing up in new sets. It says, lore-wise, we've got Vorinclex on Kaldheim. Are other Praetors showing up in new sets or commander sets? You'll have to wait and see. Possibly. Possibly not. I'm going to rephrase this question a little bit because I think I know what they're getting at. How do you decide which commanders get new versions? Is it purely off how much well, maybe that's not what it's asking.
Maybe they're referring to like the Anjay or something. Are they referring to just like legends getting new versions?
Well, so the question is, how do you decide what commanders get a retrain? I'm not entirely sure what retrain means. Is it purely off how much people enjoy it, or do you add one when an idea comes up?
I can try to answer this for what I think they're saying.
Go for it.
I think this is kind of relating to the Jaleva question, where it's like, when do we reprise a character on a new card?
That's how I read it as. That's what I read it as too. Yeah.
Right. A lot of it does come to like popularity, how we perceive their popularity. How much is this card beloved across multiple formats? Like, do a wide amount of audiences like this character, recognize this character for one? And so Audric was just like, we've made 2 Audrics. He has a lot of staying power. It's cool to like bring him back with a twist. With Anjay, Anjay was a pretty popular red-black commander. There's a lot of decks for Anjay, and it was the face card of a commander deck, which was really good for it. I think with the Jaleva, she was just a little too far back in the past, and I think it was less obvious that Jaleva was from Innistrad, in my opinion. I guess here's the Navalius Scourge. But overall, it just comes from popularity, and what comes to our mind is something that's cool to do.
All right. Next up. All right, we got a couple. It's not really a Corey question, but I'll try to answer it since I was in the conversation where this was talked about. Why is Epiphany not banned in Standard? The answer is that the bar for banning a card needs to be pretty high because it takes it out of people's collections. It changes decks, that sort of thing. Epiphany hasn't met that bar yet. It's metagame share, its win percentage. We're not particularly out of whack. We're also in a small Standard right now, and Vow is adding a ton of new stuff to the environment. For instance, getting back to Thalia, which a lot of players identified early as something that's going to be difficult for the Epiphany decks to handle if it comes out in force. So there was a bit of a wait and see mentality to see what Vow does. There was a bit of Epiphany didn't quite reach that threshold when looking at the data. So it's something the team is looking at and paying attention to, but just didn't quite reach that threshold. Okay. Back to questions for Corey. Are there plans for more 4-color commanders in the future? And since you can't really talk about the future, why don't you talk more about the challenges of designing 4-color commanders and 4-color commander decks?
Yeah, 4 colors is a really odd space. It's hard to find definition for 4 colors. For me, 4-color commanders reach this uncanny valley where it's not really understood why they're not 5 colors. Am I frozen to you, or am I right? My computer's being a little weirdo.
You're good.
Cool. Yeah, for me, they kind of hit an uncanny valley. Like, those decks might as well be 5 colors. The effort you need to run 4 colors is pretty identical, in my opinion, to the effort to run 5 colors. In general, I think if we made 4-color commanders like we make 3-color commanders, it would be pretty bad for the commander format. The more you make these commanders with larger colors that have really broad utility, it kind of washes out more niche commanders in the subset colors. And so that's something that we want to avoid a little bit, which isn't to say like that's the only reason we've been avoiding 4-color commanders. Certainly there should be a place for 4-color commanders. It's just very difficult to find that place for 4-color commanders because of the effort to find their definition, the effort to hone in on their identity, and the effort to make sure they're appealing without obsoleting 3-color commanders, 2-color commanders, 1-color commanders, etc.
Yep, that makes sense. There have been a lot of cards in this set with
this is also something you've got to keep in mind with 5-color.
Yep. Okay, so next question. Sorry. There has been a lot of cards in this set with this ability triggers only once each turn. Is that a common design element moving forward? For leaving aside, they transition into asking about Kamigawa previews, but is that a common design element that we can expect going forward?
Yeah, so I think that activating something once per turn, it's a pretty elegant way to say that. Without a card needing to tap. The words are pretty clean. They're a lot cleaner than tap activate only as sorcery, for example. I think that it's an element you'll see more often, and you'll probably see it more particularly with white card draw. Kind of the lines the Color Council have been forming around white card draw is that white's a very patient color, so we need a lot of its draw to maybe just be once a turn when you're doing some synergy stuff. And so you'll see do this once per turn, specifically on some white card draw stuff, but you also just see it on a lot of different effects because we find that it's a great way to limit against easy infinites but keep synergies and keep power level at the place we want it to be. I'll say that it's tech that we figured out good templating for quite recently, and I think people have really taken a liking to it.
Cool. I'll answer this one because we have the answer elsewhere. Why didn't you make a commander pre-constructed of werewolves? Gavin Verhey actually has a video in his Good Morning Magic series that delves into this pretty deeply. The short version is that commander decks with double-faced cards, which are what werewolves have, is not something we're really able to do right now. But yeah, I would look up Gavin's Good Morning Magic video on that. He actually did it with the previous Innistrad set, Midnight Hunt. So you can look for it there. Let's see. Next up. Yeah, that's, if we have time, we'll get. I see the legacy question, but that's not really Corey's area. We'll get to it if we can. How about this? Why was Edgar designed only as white-black and not Mardu?
Yeah, I think it was decided pretty early that we didn't really want 3-color stuff going on in Innistrad sets. We didn't really feel the need to make another Mardu Vampires Legend to compete with OG Edgar. I think, there was the slot for a white-black card that fit well in the set, would fit well in the environments, in the standard environment, et cetera, et cetera. So it just came out of a lack of desire to make more of another Mardu Legends commander.
Fair enough. And for the person asking about the Werewolf Commander deck, Stibbs was kind enough to put the link to it in chat. Next up, I noticed that Wizards has made small improvements to the overall mana bases in Commander precons, like including fetchable duels, slow fetches, and other types of non-basics of higher quality than previous. Do you think there is still room for improvement?
The mana bases are kind of a tricky thing. Personally, I don't think we need to get that complicated in mana bases, especially when we're making 2-color stuff. I think we have a lot of really solid mana bases right now, and there's room for players to take these decks and improve the mana bases on their own. But I think the mana bases are very respectable at the point they're at, and we really don't need to be improving the mana bases that much, and it's kind of a positive thing to allow players to go out and customize their mana bases on their own. There's a lot of lands to choose from, and as time goes on, there's only going to be more lands, and that's just another angle of customizability within the decks. Again, at this point, we have a lot of really good lands in our arsenal that can enter untapped and tap for 2 colors, and that can go in all these commander decks that it hasn't really been an issue in the past year.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, why can Bride's Gown not be run in Olivia for Commander? Bride's Gown, Bride's Gown, if you haven't seen it, is a white equipment. Olivia is a black-red commander. I don't know if you know the answer to that specifically. If you do, great. But can you talk generally about how much those kinds of considerations affect design?
Yeah, so Bride's Gown, it can't fit in a Olivia Commander deck, but the Bride's Gown and the Groom's the Groom's Suits, I don't know the actual card name, those cards are designed for primarily a limited audience. It's really fun to be drafting and collect the 2 pieces of clothing and combine them together in your deck. So they're really, really optimized for that audience, and they weren't really optimized for a commander audience because it would be very flavorful. Fortunately, it wouldn't be that potent in a commander deck. Also, traditionally in weddings, the bride's dress is white, and it's funny to make it a white card. It's just kind of this resonant thing. Yes, white is actually the color white, and that really tracks. Those are the main reasons why I kind of, for all you Olivia players out there, I would legit just rule 0 this and ask your play group if you can run Bride's Gown in your Olivia decks, because it's not breaking the color pie if you're running it in your red-black deck because it's getting first strike or something, and that's something red could do. So I would rule 0 that, you know, it's flavorful. I think you should just have fun with it.
Good answer. Let's see. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure to get to a few of these questions. So how about this one? It starts off, ooh. The decision against 3-color commanders in these sets, did that influence why the Werewolf Commander, Tolivar, in Midnight Hunt isn't Jund?
It may have. I wasn't on Midnight Hunt. I know that there was a period of time where Tolivar was Jund, but it didn't last very long. And I think delivering the clean red-green werewolf legend was going to be a lot better for us than, you know, trying to add all of these other knobs and facets. Like there's like a couple old black werewolves in the past, but I really don't think it's enough upside to muddy the deck, and it's just better to keep a very straightforward, clean red-green identity to werewolves. So the answer is like, yeah, there used to be a 3-color Jund legend there, but you know, even if the decision wasn't made because we wanted to lessen the 3-color stuff, I personally would have been an advocate to keep that legend on a clean red-green identity.
All right. Next up, what is your favorite 2-color pairing for this set for Limited?
My favorite 2-color pairing, I like playing with. Oh no, I actually really like the red-white one. So red-white it plays a little bit with training, but I love the flavor of a lot of the little red-white cards that kind of promote attacking with just 2 creatures or are great with just 2 creatures. I think it's kind of really fun to just attack with only 2 creatures. It's like this midway between Exalted and Battalion. I don't know. I enjoy it. I think it's really cute for the wedding theme because we always thought it felt like here are your 2 dance partners or whatever. So I'm a big fan of that stuff.
Cool. What inspired the design behind the Cemetery Cycle of cards? So, for those who don't know what these are, the Cemetery Cycle of cards are the mythic rare cycle in the main set that when they enter the battlefield or attack, I believe, you exile a card from a graveyard, and then there is an effect that is tied to that card type. So, for example, the white one makes soldiers whenever you play something of that type. The green one reduces costs, etc., etc.
Yeah, these cards are all cool. What inspired them? These kind of came from a mechanical point of view. I think these cards were mostly designed and iterated on by Play Design for competitive balance. And these came from a place of, hey, you know, we are making 2 Innistrad sets. There's going to be some graveyard mechanics. What if we made some cool mythics or rares, I don't remember what they are, that are inherently graveyard interaction in this set to kind of give more interaction with these graveyard elements at play. So that's where these all started. These all started with I believe these all started, because again, I didn't help design them. This is just what I think happened. I believe these all started with, the idea of let's give each color in this cycle a tool, a pretty cool, competitive, fun tool to play against graveyard decks and have that interaction element. And then all of the designs where they kind of keyed off the exiled card, those were all just really cool. Like, it was mostly like, let's try out these designs. Oh, wow, this is really cool space. And then 5 cards are born.
Cool. All right, well, that is it. We are out of time. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you, Corey, for introducing us to these Commander set booster cards and talking through some Commander design principles, sharing some stories, and all that jazz. We really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to be back, and we're going to be opening product. We'll be back in the studio. We'll have the fancy camera, top down. We're going to open some collector boosters, some set boosters, some draft boosters, and kind of show you real-world examples of what you can open for Crimson Vow. Again, thank you everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.